Okay, so we've got various things on the go, and so we've moved on just a little bit. So actually what we've got down here is the seats installed on the rail. A little bit tricky to get that in because there's no actual locating point. So what you have to do is, we've got the bar at the end, obviously goes on the end of the rail and down, a little bit of extra thin, run down, and then a little bit of weight put on there. Now to do that, it's quite straightforward on these seats. All we basically did it green. So in this case, we did it XF26, which is that sort of bronzy sort of materially green, okay, and then literally dry brushed grey over the top, which gives us our weathered in type of thing. And obviously it looks like metal for the bars as well, so kills two birds with one stone, and it just weathers it up very nicely. So while we've got all those parts done, what we need to do now is actually get the inside of this fuselage painted up as well. Now for that, obviously we put the two halves together so we could just have a look. So we just undo those a second. Get these bits of tape off. Now what we're going to try and do is spray the inside. Again, the colour callouts are a little bit off, or certainly to my references are wrong. It actually calls out for this cargo area here to actually be painted light green or light olive drab is actually the call out. Again, it's one of their funny mixed colours that you have to make up yourself. Okay, so, but the thing is, when you look at the references, this area here is obviously structural ribbing going up there. It's actually just aluminium. You know, it looks like aluminium colour, and the outer edge is obviously where it's flattened off. They are green. So all this in here is your sort of aluminium colour right the way through, or your stainless steel type colours. Now for that, if you're doing it with the actual cargo ramp down, if you're doing it up, you don't have to worry about any of this, but we're assuming you're going to have the cargo ramp down. We've got these, looks like teeth areas here. Now what these actually are is the locking points for the actual area itself, and they are going to come down. Let me just check my instructions here so we get this right. Okay, so you've got this sort of sawtooth, and it's actually the teeth that hang down, so make sure you've got your left and rights correct. I've got it around the other way. There is a slight kink which is going to marry up with this kink here, and there is a locating pin top and bottom, but that's all you're going to get. You're just going to get the two, so we're just going to drop a little bit of extra thin in these two, and then what we're going to do, just run a little bit of extra thin up there just for the moment, and then we're going to try and get these in. Now as I said, the locating pins are short of nothing really. The top one, to be honest, it doesn't even have it, so let's just pop them in. Now it is important for it to be in the right place, because if it's not, as you can see, or you can see it down here, is this one running down here, you want it to sort of sit in there, but again this one's jumped up, so we're just going to make sure the locating pin is in the hole, because it's the only thing that gives us any type of indication you are in the right spot. Then once you are like that, we're just going to take some extra thin, and we're just going to let it touch along the bottom of it like this, and in that way it should catch. I'm just going to pop my finger on and pop it in, and say it's one of those ones which, you know, you think, is it right, isn't it? It surely should fit better than that. This is definitely one of those cases. Okay, say it is a very, very strange the way it does it, but I'm sure it's right. Okay, so we just pop a little bit more glue at this top end. Now you could obviously use a super glue, something like that. What I'm going to do, got a couple of pegs here just to hold this all tight in against the wall as it goes in there, just like that. So we do that on the other side as well, get that one done. And what we're going to do, we're going to put some paper down here to protect this worktop, and we're going to get on, we're going to spray the inside of the fuselage, and then get this centre section all bolted up along the inside. Okay, so one of the little things you get with this kit, you can probably just about make in here, but we've got actually ejector pins running right the way across this one, and so they're quite hard to see in the light. So what we're actually doing is using the skinny sticks, you know, of obviously the various grits and sizes, we're just whipping them out. So really, let me just do it on this one here, it's literally just a case of getting in. So if we use a little one here, you can pop your stick in, and depending on the width of the hole is a little bit thick. Let's just use a slightly thinner one. We can get in there and sand out that problem. And that's the beauty about the little sticks, is they fit very, very nicely just into these holes, just like that. So if we just work our way along a couple of them just for the minute. So we'll see, coming in from whichever angle suits you best. You can just take them out just like that. Then come along with a sponge, got the flat sponge in here, fits neatly into the hole. And we can just take out all the little scratches that they make. But this is one of those ones where it's ideal in here because the sponges fit perfectly into these grooves, so we don't have any problem with them going over and things like that. So that way we can just literally come along, poke the sanding stick, and it fits right inside those grooves. So you can literally pick a one like in here. It's quite a coarse one. You can probably see it just there. Let's see, start with a rougher side first. You can literally just rub him out. When he gets a little bit, just give it the end a clean. And you can just pop it in the hole into the groove and sand them out just like that. Again, in with the sponge, just literally just a little clean up work. Just in there, and back to these others. And there we go. Easy way to take out pin marks inside a very tight area. I don't know how else you'd do it apart from physically cutting down sanding sticks. Obviously you've got little thinner ones you can get in there. But because they're quite bendable, we can get them in and take out any particular lines you want to. Okay, so we got this down. As you can see now, we've cleaned out those ejector pin marks and got rid of those. Pretty noticeable actually. It's one of those things I didn't catch until we were coming together. So what we're going to do now is simply spray some silver down. Now, as you say, I am quite a fan of the Citadel paints. I tend to go with a darker one, so you get sort of that more sort of metal, natural look. Now, if you are using Citadel paints, the good thing to remember, or the thing to remember, I should say, is that you have to thin these a lot. And by a lot, I mean a real lot. So, literally 1 mil of thinners equals probably just the tip of a brush full like that. Okay, and that goes in. So it looks, to all intents and purposes, when you look down here, it looks like dirty thinners, but this stuff is extremely thick. And to be honest, and we're probably looking at, I've had this same bottle down here for over 5 years now doing metal work with, because it just lasts forever. It goes on and on and on. Okay, so what we're going to do, check our flow. Happy how that's coming out. So what we're going to do is blow this back section in. Now it's going to be important to come in from all the angles, okay? So as soon as it starts looking wet, okay, move off and go somewhere else. So what we'll try and do, cover one area first, okay, then we'll come back in from a different angle completely, from a rear angle. Because it's ribbing like this, the airflow does tend to get all tangled up in here a little bit, so it's quite hard to get into deep into between the ribbing. But it's going to be quite important, because if you miss it, it's going to look rather odd. Okay, so we're just going to come up in that section there, going down in this tail. We won't see it particularly. Okay, but there we go. That's one done. Same thing with the other. Then what I'm going to do also, I'm going to spray the entire inside of the fuselage section. We've got these box sections which are going to fit in the middle here, okay, and cover all this up. But if we've got any gaps, I want it to look metally as if it's skin on the underside. So I'm going to carry on spraying these. Okay, so these are dry now. Now, best to let these totally dry, otherwise you're going to end up just rubbing through them. But as you can see, it gives a nice, that type of silver we wanted to do it. As I said, if you use a slightly darker one, it gives it that sort of more authentic look. If it's a very light silver, it does tend to be too shiny. So what we want to do now is give it this end look to it as if it's been painted. Now, the easiest and fastest way to do this is going to be dry brushing. So what we've got here, this is interior green. Now in the instructions it says light olive drab. I think they mean interior green. So it's probably just as quick to do it this way. So when using extra acrylic paints, as you can see, this is a classic of what happens with this stuff. If that gets in your airbrush, it's good night Vienna. Okay, as you can see, it's pretty nasty, horrible stuff. So if you can, hook it out, okay, and get rid of it. As I said, it's more like a latex paint, this stuff, than real paint. So if you twiddle it around a cocktail stick, you should find you can get hold of it and pull it out. Sometimes it's just where it's in there. But look at that. If that had got down into your airbrush, it would have been horrible. And I know we're not airbrushing it, but you know what I mean. Okay, so usual thing, just pop a bit of brushing just on the end of the bristles, like so. Down to here, and what we do, place it down and hold it down. This allows the paint to flow into the brush instead of just being on the outside, okay? And then you give it a brush. So you've sort of preloaded the paintbrush. So what you do, first of all, that's just moistened it up and got all the paint in. Just tip it to one side so we can get some more on. Okay, scraping it across the side to get rid of it all. Okay, back in again. Now I'm not taking this off, tons off, I'm leaving a little bit on. Because what we can do is we can hopefully just lightly put this down onto the edge. And the thing is, if you're taking too much off, it just won't get in. So if we get there from both directions, I hope you can see, you get that, the green. It's going to be quite hard, I think, for the camera to pick up. But trust me, when you're looking at it, it looks perfect. So what we're going to do, just place the bit down there, on there like that. Then all we're doing, as I say, just like a form of dry brushing, but just slightly in reverse, because we're trying to put down more than take off. Now normally you're trying to put down less than you can take off. So we're just doing the top of that is the latching locks back there, but you might be able to see with the two, we've got the more of a green look than the silver. Say naked eye, perfect. Through the camera, not so good. Okay, so we just do the other half again. Okay, same thing. Just take your time with it. And just remember to go both directions. And when you're very close to some of the ones that are near the bottom. But it's just a quick, cheating way, for want of a better word, of doing it. There we go, that's that one on, so you can see them on there, so it gives that green effect. Now obviously if you wanted to and you were in the mood, you could literally detail the back end of this to, and really do a fantastic job. We've seen some of the other builds that we've done that, and we've gone around and done rewiring. The Chinook build is a classic, but there is lots of hydraulic lines and things and electrical wire that run in between these ribs right the way as it goes back. And if you wanted to, you could do that. But again, this model is going to sit like this its entire life, and unless you're a midget, small person, looking up underneath, you're never going to see it, or you've got it on a glass case. So I'm not going to really worry about doing that. Okay, so that is both of those done. Now in the instructions now will call you to do the windows, to pop the glass in, but I've got a cracking little technique for you which will probably be in the next show, okay, that will show you about doing all of that without ever masking up and cutting round and cleaning windows and all of that. I've got a little technique which comes right at the very end of the build. When all the paintwork's done, everything's finished, these are going to be hollow, we'll mask them up with a little bit of paper just to stop overspray going in, but I'll show you about doing clear work afterwards. It's a great technique, it takes 10 minutes to do and gives a stunning finish. So now that that is done, we can just grab our sections and start to put it together and see how it goes in. Now before we do this, just mentioned, opened up 2 holes at the front. If you're doing the French version or the later version of this one, you're going to have to open up various ones up here on the roof here, because it's where you've got the little pods that sit on the top and things like that. Obviously, for our point of view, we're not doing that, so we're not going to worry. So actually what we got now, we can have a look just to see how this is going to fit in and how it's going to sit and look. And as you can see, we're going to fit in here something like that. And we've got our cockpit section, which is going to fit in like this. So it should be nice. So we've got to pop this together. So I've got another row of seats going in, which I really should have put in earlier, but I forgot. So what I'm going to do is just speed this up a bit and just use a touch of super glue. So if we just pop just the tiniest little bit on the back. Now this is a really old super glue. It's very, very thick. It's more like a gel. So don't look at my bottle and think, oh, he's using a medium, because this is more like a very thick now. Because as I say, I've had it a long, long time, and it's just turned to glue goop rather than nice. Now this sits down on the back here, just like that. So what you can do, let's say if you're good, you can actually do this with a touch. Now unfortunately I've just broken a couple of little rails off there, but it sits on the back. Now down the bottom here it should be silver, okay, because the actual floor system comes up to this edge, so you could touch that in by hand, which is something I might do in a moment, or you can not worry about it, because again, unless you're a small person, you're not going to see in the back of this. So what you're trying to do with a build like this, we're trying to make an effect rather than a detailed scale unit inside, okay? Now I know a lot of people now go up and down, they'll say, oh, well, you know, what's the point of doing it and all the rest of it? Because this is build here. What I want to get across to you is heavy duty weathering and fading camo paint rather than super detailing. We've covered that in other builds, so this one really is just to really show you what we can and can't do with these builds. So that's that one in position, just like that. So let me just check, make sure we've got this all the right way. We've got a couple of bits to go in the rear, but we'll do those in a moment. So what we can actually do is put the actual, this bit together. Again, I'm going to use super glue purely for speed. You could use, obviously tapes will be a good one here, but thick jellified super glue does a grand job on this. Because then I don't have to hold it, I can do it with kicker. So we're just lining them up with the grooves at the bottom. So sitting here, touch of kicker just in both of those to hold those in place. The reason for blowing is that literally, like there, it makes the capillary action work a little bit better. So we're just going to pop a tiny bit more super glue just along here. Just in here a little bit. If you find you've got too much on, and in a moment it doesn't fit, you can always sand this back a little bit, these little blobs on here. But as I said, really it's just for me to get it into position so it's all held correctly, like down here at the end. I just want to make sure it's all in the right position. And that little bit of roof. So again, bit of kicker. Now somebody the other day said to me about why do I super glue afterwards? Why do I pop along with normal glue afterwards? This is just that exact way. What I do now, put it in. The reason for the super glue, for using normal liquid cement is, if you've got a small gap, like down here perhaps, along this seam, it will fill it. The other thing it will do, if the super glue ever goes off or gets shocked and shatters, this will hold it all still together, so we don't have to worry about it coming apart, falling apart at a later date. and it just super seals the joint. Again, with extra thin, because it's capillary action, it will go straight over the super glue. It won't even worry about that. It'll whip past it and glue up the next area on with it. Yet if you just tacked it along with it, we'll come to get it in a minute, pop it together, you might stress it slightly, it shatters, falls over. You won't, because the glue will also be holding it. So it's just literally a fail safe that I'm putting in here. So there we go, that's those two sides in there. So we'll just come along with the other one as well. Now a little technique you could do is to pop a little bit of tape on this. So you can grab just a little bit of 10mm here, but just pop along, grab a couple of little bits and just stick them into place and just let it hold it in there like so. That's not what we wanted to happen. What's happened there is the inside seating rack has just come off. That's why, and a classic example, I say sometimes I amaze myself here, if I had used a little bit of glue with that as well, you wouldn't have had that problem. It would have been fine because it would have taken the strength. Yet if you're using super glue, it's been shocked and it's just fallen off. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to glue this into place using both. But that's a classic example of why you shouldn't just rely on super glue for building kits, because if that happens you have that type of effect. So we just spray those, hold that into place as it sets, make sure it's set in the right locations. And I think that's really why super glue hasn't taken off in the way of, because nobody does a super glue which isn't shockproof yet. So that's on. So we just touch and flow. What we'll do, we'll remove the tape before it goes together and we'll take care of it then. So we just all go in like that. Just the same. And what we're going to do is reseat this now so you can see where it would have been glued. So we're just going to pop some down the back spline and we'll sit this in, hopefully without making a horrendous mess. So we sat in, so what we'll do is just going to pop a tiny bit of super glue just down the back seating area, just down the back there on that edge, and it will hopefully hold it all into place. There's a little technique as well you can do with liquid cement. If you wiggle them slightly, you can bend them and it sort of grips a lot better than just sitting, because the plastic as it's melting, it just makes it sticky. So if you've got a position where you know it might fall over, just give it a touch of that and you're fine. Now there we go, that's our inside section done. So we're looking up here. Now at the moment it's a little bit too clean, so we're going to want to weather that up. So before we put the roof on, obviously we just let that dry a second. We are literally just going to give it a quick spray, the same way as we did the cockpit, with that dirty thinners almost, but that very, very loose well. So we've got the Indian ink here. Okay, so we've just got tiniest little drop just going in. So again, all we're going to do, we've got it in to be quite hard for you to see. Bubbles in your colour cup means the nozzle isn't tight enough, so that's why it did that. Okay, that's light passes up and down the cargo rail, on the floor, and let it all just sink about and do its thing. Okay, all in there, and as that dries it will dry flat and it will stick, and then hopefully it will give a nasty look to the floor. It will give it that more robust, rugged floor look. Again, let's get in there. Onto the seats. So it's very thin this, so you can go a little bit to town. Okay, and it will just give it that dirty floor type of look to it. See, also you could use the wash, you could get in there and pop the wash down as well. just going to brush it down on the floor a little bit just to work it in. Just like so. Give it a wipe along the seats just to keep it more random. Hopefully you can see, there we go, we've got it down in there and in, but the thing is it's going to be all dark and very dingy in there, so what we'll do, we'll just move that over there, we'll just give it another coat to the ceiling part. As I say, we're just trying to grubby it up, we're not trying to kill it off, but just trying to give it that more dirty look to it and everything else, so that will do with that. Happy how that's gone, so we'll get that cleaned up all in a moment. Just pop the lid on the Indian ink in case we get a spillage. Okay, it dries very quickly, so we won't have to worry too much about it. Whilst that's all happening, what we'll do is we'll install the cockpit into the front. So again, don't worry about the glass, we're going to do them afterwards unless you want to do them now, okay, but all you'll need, but what you've actually got, there's a locating down here. This is for the main part of the rear fuselage to sit in. So again, we're just going to come along with good old-fashioned extra thin, big puddle of it just down in there. Okay, then we'll just take our fuselage section and sit that in. Should see where it is, it'll sit in there just like that, and then we'll just make sure the back's in as well. Now, I did think it was slightly strange at the time, but there's a slight toe-in area at the back there. What I'll do, let me just snip it off and see if it fits. If it does, I'll show you what I've just done. It does. Okay, that's in there now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put extra thin down in this corner. The capillary action then will run around, hopefully, that top part. And then what we can do is we can get a good old-fashioned peg and hold that into position. We've got good old-fashioned pegs, hopefully working at the front. Same thing, extra thin, quite a bit of it. Gonna pop a bit in here. So capillary action runs around this front, again, sealing it all into position. As I say, they're always so much hit and miss to get these things in. You know, sometimes they fit a dream, sometimes they don't. Now I've got the top part to go in, so we'll just leave that to one side just to dry a little bit. What we've actually just snipped off then, down here you've got this little bar, this little kick plate going backwards. Where you can see it, this here, you see it's got a little tiny lip on it down the back here. We're just going to snip that bit off because it interferes with how that sits. Okay, so you might be able to see there where we've just snipped it back, and that will help that sitting on there. We don't want to put it together until we've got the roof section in. So I know I'm rushing this slightly around a little bit. Okay, so what we can do now is just pop the roof in, which ideally you would have done before putting this in. Seeing how it all sits and fits. Okay, so what we can do, come along with the extra thin and just run it down the inside here. Just fit that section first. So we're just looking how it's sitting. It seems to be sitting okay. Tense time cramming all this in. So again, for speed, I'm just going to tack some of these in place because we're just a little bit concerned on how they're going to fit. We know these are fitting lovely here, so we just kicker and spray just to hold all these in place. And so we will come back with some more in a moment. Just dry those down. Okay, so we can stick the other side in. So now we can look at this front cockpit area. Cockpit. Again, didn't glue it to the front. There was a reason for that. It's so you've got a little bit of play. Without the play, you might have had all types of problems, but that is in there as well now. So there we go. That's our sections all in there now. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to let these briefly dry off just for a minute. As soon as they're basically dry, we can really push it in then, make sure we're all in there, seal up these gaps running down the side here, this top part, making sure it's all in together. Okay, and then once we're all in like that, we can get the other fuselage side, get it together, get it bolted in and everything else like that.